Assalamu alaikum and welcome to today's Health is Wealth episode. Today we'll be talking about sugar in the diet. There is a high amount of sugar in many processed foods. There is roughly about 9 teaspoons of sugar in a regular cola can. But did you know that there is about 4 teaspoons of sugar in a can of tomato soup? Add a couple of slices of white bread to that at about 1 teaspoon each. Couple of teaspoons for your tea or coffee, and that's your total energy intake for sugar for the day. Sugar shouldn't comprise more than 5% of your total energy intake, and that's roughly 6 teaspoons of sugar for adults. With me today in the studio, I have Dr Aseem Malhotra, who's a consultant cardiologist, and he is also leading a worldwide campaign on sugar in the diet. Welcome to the show, Aseem.
Hi, Nadia.
So Aseem, I wanted to ask you, is sugar really that bad for you?
Well, I think your introduction actually says quite a lot, and it's very important for people to be aware about sugar in the diet and the effects it has on your health. So the first thing to say is added sugar has absolutely no nutritional value. There is no biological requirement by the body to have added sugar. In addition, contrary to what the food industry want to tell you, you do not need any energy from added sugar. So there's no reason to consume it whatsoever. Then we look into the health effects. So we know that even a little bit of sugar is directly toxic to teeth, to tooth enamel. And that's important because for children in particular, the commonest cause of tooth decay is sugar. That's a single substance we ingest that causes tooth decay. Commonest cause of chronic pain in children in the UK is tooth decay. And also the commonest cause of hospital admissions is tooth decay. Now, you mentioned the 6 teaspoons. The World Health Organization actually have come out to recommend a maximum limit for the average adult of 6 teaspoons of sugar per day. And for the average 4 to 8-year-old child, American guidelines suggest no more than 3. Now, when you get above these levels of consumption, that's when you start getting adverse health consequences. So we've already talked about issues to do with teeth, but actually now the implications of sugar contributes to a whole host of diseases, which include type 2 diabetes, high blood pressure, heart disease, and even potentially contributes to increasing the risk of cancer.
Yeah, that's shocking figures actually. But let's talk about juice. Surely juice is okay for you. I mean, it's made from fruit. Any problems with juice?
Well, the thing is, one of the worst ways of consuming sugar is in liquid form. And actually, the body doesn't know the difference between the sugar it's getting from a can of cola, for example, and the sugar it's getting from juice. Now, if you think about, if you take a glass of orange juice, actually what happens is, when you get the juice from the fruit, you've got rid of all the fiber, and all you've got is literally liquid sugar with some nutritional value, but actually that's in great excess of more than what you need to consume. So the average glass of orange juice can have up to 7 teaspoons of sugar, and that's already over the limit for the day of consumption. What's interesting is as well, is it doesn't make you feel full. So you can easily have a glass of orange juice which might be made up of around 4, 5 or even 6 oranges, but try and consume even 3 oranges and you'll feel full very quickly.
Right. So is it all that bad, sugar? I mean, do we completely eliminate sugar from our diet?
Well, listen, speaking from a personal perspective, Nadia, I love sugar. I love sugary treats. I used to eat a lot of sugar, but then I realized it was having an adverse effect on my health. I know about all the science that's evolving, showing it's linked to a host of diseases. And therefore I've reduced it considerably. So I think people need to reduce it and not consume more than the maximum limit, but they should realize they do not need it in their diet at all.
So you've talked about diseases which, high intake of sugar can sort of be a risk factor to. What evidence is there behind having high sugar in your diet causing these?
Yeah, well, one of the best studies that was done was carried out by researchers in Stanford University in California, led by a doctor called Dr Sanjay Basu. And what they did is they looked at sugar availability worldwide through 175 countries, which included a lot of countries in the Middle East and in Asia. And what they found was, for every excess consumption of 150 calories of sugar, so typical of a can of cola, there was an 11-fold increase in the prevalence of type 2 diabetes that was independent of physical activity and even body mass index, in comparison to consuming excess 150 calories from, say, protein or fat. So what that tells us is there is something unique about calories from sugar that is potentially very harmful to the body. And even if you're exercising, even if you're a normal weight, you're still vulnerable. So really you can't outrun a high sugar diet.
Gosh, that really has caused a bit of cause for concern here. So I'm thinking this right now, and I'm sure our viewers are thinking the same. Can we substitute NutraSweet for sugar?
Well, actually, I wouldn't advise that as a first line. I think there are some people who are so addicted to sugar, or they feel they need sugar all the time, that for them to wean themselves off, they would, it might help them to take a sweetener, for example. But actually what we need to do across the population is really unsweeten the sweet tooth, because we're consuming way too much sugar. We know, for example, in the UK, the average UK adult is consuming at least 2 to 3 times the World Health Organization limit for sugar consumption per day. And we have a huge problem with type 2 diabetes and obesity in this country. We know in the Middle East, the prevalence of type 2 diabetes is massive. Countries like India and Pakistan, China, they have massive problems with type 2 diabetes now. And in my view, the single most important dietary culprit is sugar. It is public health enemy number 1 in the diet.
So what would your advice be then to our viewers when it comes to sugar?
Well, I think one thing is to recognize you don't need it as part of your healthy, balanced diet. It should be seen as a treat. And of course, there's nothing wrong with having the occasional treat, chocolate ice cream, for example.
Or the odd jalebi.
Absolutely, but very odd jalebi, but not something we should be consuming with every meal. And unfortunately, one of the things that people haven't realized is a lot of sugar consumption, up to half, certainly in the United States, and it's similar in the UK, and I suspect is getting that way also in other countries across the world. About half of sugar consumption actually comes from foods that people don't normally associate as being junk food. So not from sugary drinks or from chocolate bars or ice cream, but from foods like salad dressings, low-fat yogurt, soups that you mentioned, bread. The food industry has added sugar to so many foods, which makes it very difficult to avoid. So one of the interesting and useful bits of information for the people watching to try and work out how much sugar is in food is when you look at the label, it will tell you quite often how much sugar is in it in terms of grams. 4 grams is 1 teaspoon.
Right.
So therefore you should try and make sure you're not consuming more than 24 grams of sugar per day in your diet if you want to improve your health. And what's interesting as well is that if you reduce your sugar consumption, your impact on your health will be very quick. Even within months, we know it can reduce the risk of you developing conditions such as type 2 diabetes, and also in terms of putting on weight. Because sugar has no nutritional value, what the body does in excess, it converts that sugar into fat. It goes straight to fat storage, and actually we know it's one of the main drivers behind the obesity epidemic.
So Aseem, what about sugary drinks? What's your view on that?
I think sugary drinks are one of the worst culprits behind excess sugar consumption having adverse effect on our health. Juice, for example, one of my pieces of advice would be for parents, please try and avoid giving your children juice because it is harming their health. I would call all sugar sweetened beverages mini health time bombs.
Goodness me, that is very, very scary and very shocking to hear. Thank you very much for joining us today, Aseem. So there we have it. Sugar is harmful for us, and sugary drinks, like Dr. Aseem said, is like a ticking time bomb. Please be very careful when you are buying products because there are many hidden sugars within products, and like we've been advised today, check the label and see how much sugar is actually in the product you're consuming. Thank you very much. We hope you enjoyed the show today, and now it's time for our fitness segment with our personal trainer. Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. It's very important to stay active during Ramadan. You can do this in many ways. My first advice is just to do your regular thing that you normally do every day. So if you always wake up in the morning and do the dishes, wake up and do the dishes during Ramadan as well. Stay within your normal routine and stay active with it. Now, if you're struggling for ways to stay active, if you're feeling like you're not doing enough, there are always other things that you can do. For one, if you've got a lift and you live in a flat, take the stairs instead. Walk up the stairs instead of standing in a lift. If you take the underground or any other public transportation a lot, don't choose to sit down, stand instead. That uses more energy as well and will keep you more active. You can do little things like cleaning around the house. If you've got children, play with your children, take them outside, take a walk in the park, do whatever you see normal, what you normally do during the day, and then enjoy it as well.